Good afternoon, and welcome to the Nordic Cookbook for Systems Change. How can we prevent food waste and ensure economic sustainability for small farmers? I'm Johanna Mendelson Forman, and I'm honored to be your host. I'm the only non-Nordic in this group, I guess with my Baltic colleagues. But this afternoon, we're going to have a great group of experts to talk about the challenges that we face and how the Cookbook for Systems Change can produce a system that is transformed so that we create sustainable economic development. Our speakers today are Dr. Jolanta Blažaitė, I hope I've said your name correctly, who is chairperson of the board of the Food Bank in Lithuania, Elina Ozola, who is the head of the Department of Rural Development of the Latvian Rural Advisory and Training Center. And next we have Evelin Piirsalu, who is with the Stockholm Environment Institute in Tallinn, Estonia. And we have finally Olav Kjørven, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Eat Foundation in Norway. So good morning to all of you, and I guess it's afternoon in Central Europe. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm in Washington, D.C. Just a little bit about who I am, and we'll go through our speakers. I am a distinguished fellow with the Stimson Center, a think tank in Washington, D.C., where I specialize in food security and run their department there, and also a professor at the American University in Washington, D.C., where I teach about conflict cuisine. Jolanta, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hello Johanna, thanks, and hello to everybody listening. So I am the chairperson of the Food Bank in Lithuania. I think this is how the main thing that I want to present about myself today. And I'm with the Food Bank for 20 years since its very beginning. And I think that in this case, it is more important to present the food bank since it is really an important actor in the food system in Lithuania. And just to briefly tell that last year, the food bank saved over 5,300 tons of food, which is like 11 million meals for the poor. And it is almost 100 billion liters of fresh water saved, which would otherwise would be used to somewhat in the production of in some of the production of this food, and also more than 5 million tons of CO2 emissions avoided.
So, that's very impressive.
Yeah. So from this perspective, I truly want to say hi to everybody and welcome here in this talk.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. I know you have a compelling story to tell. Elina, how about you?
Hello. Today it is a pleasure to represent Latvia and the Latvia Rural Advisory and Training Center. We are the biggest training and advisory center in Latvia for farmers. Our main focus is work with small and medium farmers in several sectors. But one of our mission and focus is also food producing from field, more from field, and also making some raw material to something to eat. And we create electronic catalog for small food producers. There are approximately 1,000 small farmers, and I think today maybe I can tell more, not what Jolanta about food waste, but more about how farmers feel in this sector and what challenges they need to see and what maybe they need to change in their work.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Evelin. Could you introduce yourself from Tallinn?
Yes, thank you. Hello and good afternoon from my side. I am Evelin Piirsalu from Stockholm Environment Institute Tallinn Center, where I'm working as researcher and senior expert, and my field of expertise in or one of them has been in recent years in food waste in the entire food system. I've been doing studies on food waste and food loss in Estonian food supply chain, as well as worked on food waste prevention and reduction, and also awareness raising in that field. But I've also been involved in a bit wider field in sustainable and healthy school food, which also involves different actors in the food system. Thank you.
Thank you. And Olav, last but not least, coming to us from COP26, which is very timely, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hi everybody. It's a real pleasure to be with you all in this exciting dialogue. So I'm Olav Kjørven. I'm Senior Director of Strategy with EAT. EAT is a non-profit organization based in Oslo in Norway, but we work globally for nothing less than food system transformation. We see our food systems around the world today as basically off the rails. They're not delivering for people nor for planet. And we need fundamental shifts both in food production and consumption, guided, of course, by the best available science, in order to feed all people around the world a healthy diet, but within the boundaries of our planet. So that's what we work for. I'm in Glasgow, as you said, Johanna, attending COP26, the big global climate conference. But as I said, normally based in Oslo in Norway.
Thank you. So we have really 4 experts and a very good cross-Baltic view, so we can begin our questions. But let me say one thing, because I'm always impressed with cookbooks as someone who writes about food and cooking. And when I first heard the idea of this cookbook for systems change, I thought it was one of the most clever ways to present something. Because we all know that cookbooks present a list of ingredients, but it's all of us up to the cooks to try and integrate them into our respective systems and countries. And so this important roadmap for policymakers and for civil society is something that everyone can use. Now, clearly, our panelists have already been cooking up a storm in their countries, whether it's through food banks or working with farmers or doing first-line research. But I set out a list of questions that I'd like you to respond to. And each of you, you can just start in whichever order. But I asked you about each of your countries uses a recipe differently to reduce food waste in your community. Could you tell us a little bit about the materials and organizations you have available to help change the food systems? And are you missing anything that would help you take action for such an ambitious goal of integrating the whole concept of food waste, reducing food waste, and integrating local farmers into the system? Who would like to start?
So I can start maybe because, as I told with the food bank, we have a long history of saving food. But we see that there are, many ways to save food, and there are many approaches, and we really try to somewhat look and better understand the food loss. And lately we have discovered that the food that comes from farms to the food bank really makes a very small percentage of saved food. It's about only 2% of the food that is saved, which is truly a very, very small percentage. So we also looked at the research done in other countries, and maybe our colleague from Estonia can tell if a similar research was done in Estonia. But we looked at the US, for example, where there was a recent study from Santa Clara University that 1/3 of all edible produce, more than 33%, remains unharvested in the fields and gets disked under. So we are truly now trying to look at the possibilities to save food from farmers. And there are, like you are asking Johanna about, like these different elements and different recipes. We also thinking about the recipes, the food that our client, people who experience food insecurity, that they receive. And we see that the local farm food truly might have a much better nutrition value for those people than the end product they get, like from the saved food that we get from supermarkets and basically, the retailers. So we are truly looking for recipes to cook now to see how we can promote the saving of this produce from farmers, from small farmers, from commercial, but also subsistence farmers, which opens quite a new direction in the food bank activity.
Let me ask a question to Evelin, because in your research experience, it seems to me, not only in the Baltics, but around the world, the whole problem of unused produce, whether it's in the Western developed countries or the underdeveloped countries, is a major source of a problem. What have you seen in your research that might actually help us do things that Jolanta suggested, for example, of trying to help use this food by using real recipes, training people to use what is initially thrown away? And Alina, too, chime in. And I guess with the EAT Foundation, Olav, you've had a lot of experience around sustainable, nutritious food. Each of you might want to comment on what Jolanta has opened with, which is a very important point. Evelin, you want to go ahead?
Yes. If I can continue from here, I mean, our research covers the whole food system, not just the agriculture and primary food production, but just to start from there, we can see that in Estonia, the food waste that's generated in the agricultures is very much related to weather, and this is like the main and the biggest source or the reason of food waste in agriculture. But at the same time, there's also, of course, the possibilities to get the produce marketed or find the buyers to all the produce. And there have been also, discussions on how public procurement as have been working also on the school food, and in Estonia, it's usually done. School catering is usually done via public procurement and catering companies. But the problem there is that how is the small farmers are maybe not so competitive in this system to enter into public procurements for several reasons. So that's definitely one of the points where something can be done. Yeah, of course, there's a lot else what I can talk, but maybe I stop right now here.
I just want to go to Alina, since she's working with small farmers, to see how you have been looking at this issue in relationship to trying to get produce into markets and reducing waste.
Yes, when Evelina said about small farmers and public procurement, then yes, we are also see this problem because small farmers, one part is maybe they are not ready for procurements and long-term contract with school or other institution. And on the other side, they don't not see this market as a profitable market, because there is sometimes there is a low price, and the main reason for public procurement is to find cheaper products, and then they are not interested in this market, and this is what we find as a problem. And now we are working with this electronic catalog, where we can making place where this producer and consumer can meet each other, and maybe start this cooperation, start some conversation, and understand each other, understand why price is as it is, and maybe this cheaper is not better, and maybe this and maybe you don't need so much food or something. And other thing I would like to add is some examples about how small producers, small farmers work with this some products which left from market, and you didn't sell in market, maybe some strawberries or cucumbers or something which is not in other day they won't be so good, and buyer don't want them. So there is many products, innovation products maybe. Small farmers start producing, for example, strawberry powder or also vegetable powders, and then this time for selling is longer, and so they don't need to throw away these products, but they are producing something new. So this is one way which we see as a solution, is making something new, and maybe think out of box, and think what else they can do with this product.
Well, that's certainly a recipe for change, and a very creative one. Olav, you've been working in these areas also around food waste and how to create out of excess food other types of food that can be used by people around your own country. Could you talk a little bit about how Eat Forum has addressed this issue of waste?
Sure. Thank you. And the first thing I want to say is that, Eat, we are basically a global platform working primarily at the global level. Everything we do is really based on the best available science, such as, for instance, the Eat Lancet report, but also many other assessments, such as from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, for instance. But then what we really do with that is that we strive to bring the widest possible range of actors together to define the kinds of collaborative actions that can drive food system change. And when we talk about food system change, we mean broadly four things, right? It's about shifting to more regenerative production methods that are pro-nature, nature positive. It's about a shift in consumption patterns to healthier diets that are better for people, better for people's health. It's definitely about the food loss and waste problem, which is an enormous problem. 30% of the food we produce gets lost, which is a travesty. And then the final issue, key issue, is that of livelihoods, decent livelihoods for food producers, farmers, and fishing communities. Now, and what is really, really important here from our perspective in order to tackle these issues, including the food loss and waste challenge, is to, across civil society, governments at both national and local levels, farmers and their organizations, and the private sector, food processors, the food service, and the food retail actors, to bring them all together to find the solutions that can actually work, that can allow us to really slash food loss and waste out of the system as much as possible. And all of these actors are equally relevant and important in all countries. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, and that includes, of course, the Baltic states. So the first key step in our experience is to bring all the relevant actors together.
So Olav, you anticipated my next question, which is about how the Cookbook for food systems change relies on the power of civil society organizations to create these transformations for a more sustainable food system. And I was wondering if each of you from Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania could talk about the ways local groups, community organizations, regional organizations want to be part of this change. And I guess there was a mention in Lithuania about how some of this food was being used by hospitals and schools, but what is it going to take to bring civil society to this level? Because the figure about the food waste that has been constant seems to be that same percentage of 40%, it's sometimes higher, and it really seems that the Cookbook talks about the power of civil society to move this. So could each of you comment on how you see your own civil society organizations and also the private sector, because they're involved in procurement, working to create the sustainable food system?
So, if I may. So yeah, building on what Olav said and Evelin before, and you, Johanna, I think we need to very carefully map the whole system and see who participates in all the chain, and so from our perspective, truly we try to discover all the actors in this chain and become a catalyst to somehow to see that this chain becomes better capable to uptake this surplus food. We are speaking not only about marketing the farmers' produce so much, but we are truly concerned about the surplus and the so-called imperfect or ugly food, the farmers' produce that buyers would not be so keen to buy, but it's still good food and it can serve the purpose of feeding a lot of people in a very nutritious and very healthy, life-promoting way. So in Lithuania, we are looking at the chain that, it has several levels. And here we have the food growers or the farmers level, which Elena was speaking about, and they occasionally take initiatives to save the food, and this is very, very good and very welcome. But on the other hand, they sometimes don't have the capacity to do that, and in this they need some catalysts like the food bank, which occasionally, like with the help of volunteers, helps to harvest for example, we had harvest of pumpkins now, and helping the farmers to harvest and to deliver these pumpkins to those who need. But really, there I see a lot of possibilities for community, for local community, for schools, for everybody who is keen to save food, to help the farmers to somewhat maybe gather the produce. But also the government is another important actor in the field to create incentives for the farmers to maybe deliver this food to the places where it could be made into some food products that would last longer. So we are also working on this level. We are working with our Ministry of Agriculture, and hopefully very soon there will be some incentives for farmers to try to save more of this imperfect or ugly produce and surplus produce, as we call it. And then there is also a problem of access to producers, because if you have the food that comes from farms, and it's like we call imperfect. For example, it's smaller fruits, smaller vegetables, and the production lines, they are very like streamlined to work with the products of certain size and certain quality. So we truly need to open up possibilities for small farmers to get to these production lines, which would help them to convert these products into something that can be preserved. So at the food bank, we are truly now looking into possibilities to make some kind of a small factory, some kind of facility where farmers could bring their products, and then we would help them to produce.
I want to know if in any of the other countries there's government support for that, because there is an ugly fruit movement in the United States where people actually buy through farm shares produce that isn't pretty, but is certainly edible and of good quality. And it seems that it's caught on and a lot of people order it. It's not at the scale we'd like it to be. But Alina, has there been anything like that in, for example, Latvia?
Unfortunately, I don't know. So probably there are no such a movement in Latvia, because this year we started talk about food very much. Our organization was also one of organization which organize national dialogue, and we invite as much involved people in food systems as we can. And maybe it was like first time where so many stakeholders and involved persons were together and start talking about food and what we need to change, because I think raising awareness is most important thing in food systems stakeholders and involved participants, because one of things what we realize organized some discussions was that, for example, in public procurement for school meals, there are approximately 5 institutions, ministries involved, but they never come together and talk about this system together. So one ministry is like making requirements, other are calculating budget, and other also something else. So in Latvia we need to be more friendly maybe, and organize more discussions and talk to each other. And today we had also one conference for young farmers and also young people in countryside, and one quote from small food producer in Latvia was, "You don't have to be perfect. You have to be real, like true. You have to talk from heart." And also, I think this is also most important thing in this changing food systems, that all stakeholders, all participants which are involved in food system, and as we in Cookbook we also can see this food systems is very big, and there are very complex system. So there is strong need for discussions, for meetings, and for strong cooperation and also insight.
So you've talked about what we call holistic approaches, and what you also describe is what we also talk about as stovepiping, keeping things in separate bins so that people don't know what the other is doing. But on a research perspective, Evelin, this is a big challenge for all of us, and it leads into the next question. In the Baltics, you've each described different experiences, and all of you've had experiences globally. How can you perhaps take some of these lessons, Jolanta, what you're talking about with using the food bank as a place perhaps for innovation for farmers, and Alina getting these discussions going with civil societies, with the farmers groups, and Evelin maybe talking a little bit about this from a research perspective, and Olav globally. How do we get to address these challenges from a cross-regional perspective? Because I think there's a lot of knowledge. And maybe, Evelin, let me start with you as the researcher on this, and then get Olav to chime in. But you've mentioned challenges. Let's talk about how to address them from a regional perspective.
Yes. I mean, in Estonia, also one of the sort of leading organizations in this food waste prevention is Food Bank, and there has been mostly the cooperation has been, or the best so far has been with the retailers, but now really the goal is to widen this beyond the retailers also to the food processing industry and catering institutions and also farmers and agriculture, and for that, definitely, I mean, this is kind of platform for cooperation, I mean, which has been also kind of hinted here, is needed, where these different parties can come together and discuss these issues from each perspective, because each of these actors have their own standpoints and their own challenges, which maybe they don't sort of see always from being far. But this has been kind of challenge so far, which in our needs to be still need to work on in Estonia, and we do this in like Food Bank is also in our case one of the organizations which is starting to lead this process also. But we also need the Ministry of Environment on board in this, when preparing recently also for example, circular economy strategies and strategic documents where food is definitely one of the important topics.
So just to get back, Olav, I just want to ask one question I was going to direct to you, but what is being done to work cross-regionally about these issues? Because each of you has talked about the challenges in your own countries, which are very important. Each tends to work cross-nationally. Are there meetings? And maybe you can address that, Olav, and you other three panelists can talk about that as well.
I'm very happy to come in on this, and nothing would make me happier than if the Baltic countries together would really put on the table how can those three countries as a sub-region really make progress by working together. When we look at it from a global perspective, there aren't too many examples, but the one that really stands out is, of course, the European Union with the Green Deal, and within that, the Farm to Fork strategy, which is the most significant development on the global stage. And of course, the Baltic states are very much a part of of that, and that provides a very interesting and powerful framework. In the Nordic countries, we've had an interesting development because, like most countries around the world, sadly, they have not, as individual countries, come up with a holistic food system strategy or action plan at the level of the national government. That's something that's missing around the world. But there is an evolution towards taking a regional approach to this, which is interesting and hopeful. And we think that that is worth looking at also in the Baltic region. The good news now is also that there is momentum coming out of the recent United Nations Food System Summit, both to put together action plans at the national level, but also increasingly looking at it at the regional level. And I think while kind of waiting for national governments to get their act together, so to speak, one has to start somewhere. And I think the kind of dialogue that we're having here today is actually such a start. And the cookbook provides actually a pathway forward. It's all about identifying a grand challenge that one can build an exciting mission around that can get key actors interested and mobilized to take part. So I think with the cookbook as a starting point, that could perhaps trigger some excitement and interest across the Baltic countries to define a grand challenge that you can then move forward with and build a mission around with all the relevant stakeholders engaged.
That's a very important point, and I wondered if our other panelists from Lithuania and Latvia and Tallinn agree that maybe as we go out of this discussion, we talk about what action would be needed, and this seems to be something that each of you might want to bring back not only to your government, but to representatives of civil society. This is somebody speaking as an outsider, but is there an appetite, it's a bad pun in English, for this kind of change, to talk about cross-border support? I mean, Jolanta, you want to start?
Yeah, I think mobilization is truly a very, very good word, and thanks Olav for using it. I think that all of us across, because borders are practically non-existent between Baltic countries, and when we are speaking about our efforts and like some facility that we want to establish to work with Lithuanian produce, we are thinking about the region which is close to Latvia, so why not sharing, the facility? But it's just on a very practical level. But yes, we do need the support on political level, and I think the more cross region, the more cross Baltic, the more regional it is, the stronger it is. I think that there is a lot of knowledge that we can share, not only on political level, but it should basically, I think it helps if it comes from the political level first, but it opens up, like the doors for mobilization and for different organizations working together across borders. So I think that it's an important thing, and first of all, if we can make this dialogue between politicians on saving food, on helping farmers, not to help them, not that this food is not wasted, then we can go easy. It is easier for us to address these issues in a very practical way.
So is that your call to action today?
Basically, I think we could start there, but we will be doing simultaneously a lot of other action as we are used to. But truly, I think we should work in all possible directions, and one of them I see a lot of value in this regional dialogue and exchange of knowledge, information, and helping all the actors to mobilize on this issue.
Alina, do you agree with this? Do you think you could mobilize people in your own country to work cross-border? You've got a nice neighbor.
Yes, I think also this mobilize and come together is right action, because reading this cookbook before this event, it was like very well written, and I think every participant involved in food system could understand this, and also take some quotes and some examples why coming together and why cooperation is very important, and also why analyzing situations and analyzing sectors and analyzing like past is very important to make something new. And also I agree about starting from something smaller and then go bigger. Maybe some examples and some experiments in one region, in one school, in one I don't know, in one cooperative could help show others that this is the way how we can work in future. And also some actions which I thought before this event. I think there is also more discussions. As I mentioned, we are not we are not making enough talking and analyzing and finding out what others involved, other participants feel, and how this work is acting together, not
So
only by myself.
So I think if I hear you, and I'm going to go to Evelin next, is that you have three people from three different countries in the Baltic who could mobilize their different resources fairly quickly and start some kind of a cross-border experiment. But what would be your call to action, Alina, before we go to Evelin?
Sorry, I didn't. So, what action?
So, what action would you like to see out of this conversation? Is there something that grabbed you, or you've talked about the local farmers? What would you like to be an action based on the cookbook you've just read?
I think our first action, I think, is discussions more with farmers and their feelings and work about all what is in cookbook or other things in system.
Thank you. And Evelin, can let you in.
Yes, about this regional cooperation or cross-border cooperation, my mind came to that we don't have this similar organization as Nordic Council of Ministers, which brings together different Nordic countries and through what a lot of cooperation between these countries is initiated and carried out. But at the same time, there are Nordic Council of Minister offices also in all of the Baltic states, and that's one of the places where this cooperation actually maybe could start. We had some years ago, we had such work done on textile, circular textile and textile waste. where we got we did some review in the Baltic states of the situation, and with the counseling and cooperation or advice from the Nordic, and this, I guess, is something that we can also, learning from Nordic countries, but at the same time start out the cooperation in the Baltic states, and maybe also use some other funding sources, because just start out, it's a good idea to start out, but there's always some resources needed also for that. And why not to use the available possibilities and funds that to sort of support this such cooperation.
Well, I think that's an excellent idea, so I'm going to throw it open to Olav, who isn't a big foundation that works globally, but I'd like to say, as the man who helped put the Sustainable Development Goal Coalition together globally, maybe this is not as big a task, but perhaps you have some thoughts as we run to the end of this program. We're running out of time, about how you use perhaps the Nordic Council and other cross-national programs to implement some of these recommendations for cooked food transformation.
Well, thank you, Johanna. It's kind of amazing to reflect back on how we got the whole process underway that led to the fact that we now have these 17 sustainable development goals that all countries in the world have signed up to and are basically trying to reach, and with also other stakeholders in society actively engaged in achieving these SDGs, the private sector, cities and municipalities, and the list goes on and on. And it started with conversations, right? Conversations between first a few relatively few numbers of people talking about okay, what can we do to make people think differently about what's possible. And those conversations then grew into bigger and bigger dialogues around the world and involving all these relevant stakeholders. So dialogue really is, like the one we're having today, is the first step. That's when that's what triggers new ideas and galvanizes people to actually work together towards a common goal. It's important then in the context of let's say the Baltic countries and the issues we're talking about here to really be very inclusive about who should be involved. And it's basically everybody with a stake in the matter, the producers, the food service and retail actors, the consumers, of course, the municipalities, national authorities. It might be hard to initially get representatives from all these stakeholders into a first dialogue, but then why not start with those who are ready to engage and then build out from there, drawing in all the key actors as you go along. I think it's really important also that the dialogue be grounded in science and in facts of knowing what the problem is and why it is a problem. At the same time, with a keen understanding of local realities, talking about food waste in the Baltics, what is the nature of that problem in the Baltics? And I also think the dialogue must be forward-looking. It has to be open and inclusive and with a positive vibe. It's really exciting, right, to tackle this problem together. That needs to be the vibe in these dialogues, so that people come out of them committed and excited about turning words into reality.
Thank you. I wish we had more time, because I think we were just getting to the core issues of transformation. But Olav, since you're sitting there in Glasgow today, one of the most exciting parts going forward is the connection between climate and food, that there's now finally a articulation of the important nexus between food transformation and saving our planet. And I really think all of you today have done a wonderful job of identifying the potential for cross-regional cooperation. And Olav, I'm giving you a job through the forum to also perhaps be one of the conveners locally with the Nordic Council, since you're in a Nordic country, to try and help organize a deeper conversation than the brief talk we had this morning about what is going on with this excellent product, the Cookbook for Change. I'd like to thank everybody, Jolanta, Alina, Evelin, and Olav for your participation this morning, and also to Jennifer Avci, who is not on the screen, but has been the orchestrator of this wonderful event, and the Nordic Council for its support. I want to thank everybody and the Nordic Cookbooks for Systems Change for helping us think more deeply about the challenges of working cross-regionally. So again, I'm Johanna Mendelson Forman, your host, and actually extremely honored to be part of this important conversation. So bye